Okay, as I mentioned earlier, we've got some absolutely great panelists here in store for you today. I think what they have to say is really going to serve as grist for the mill. It's going to hopefully inspire you, give you some ideas that you want to take back and work with. And one of the things that I want to stress is that the people on our panels are available this as you go into your groups, both this morning group, although the morning group you're probably going to need to spend a lot of time just getting to know each other and doing your asset mapping. But the afternoon group today, the group tomorrow morning, your team meeting, they'll be available if you want them to come in, maybe answer some questions that you might have, give you a little bit more detailed information about how they were able to accomplish what they did in their own states. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later and who to see to set that up. The facilitators know how to make those arrangements for you. So if you want them, please let them know. Okay, our first team here, we're presenting, it's a combination of two of the four areas that we're focusing on, and your team meetings parallel these same areas. Today we're looking at policy and strategic planning and resource alignment. And the moderator for today's panel is someone I know very well and have worked very closely with. That's Laura Ginsburg. Laura, how many of you know Laura Ginsburg? Okay, if you don't, get to know her. She's a team leader in the Office of Apprenticeship, and she's been with OA for about 10 years and is responsible for integration and partnership efforts with the workforce system and education. She's also responsible for outreach to high growth and emerging industries, and that's something that I know a lot of you are interested in, and Laura is an excellent resource if you're interested in what's going on around the country, who's doing what, and how to go about it. And prior to joining the Department of Labor, Laura worked for the AFL-CIO. And you should know that Laura is one of the prime movers and shakers behind this whole idea of having the action clinics. So with that, we'll have Laura take over and introduce her panel. Please welcome the panel. Let's have a round of applause before they get started.
Well, thank you, Bernie. Can everybody hear me? No? I don't know if
Put the mic in front of you and we'll adjust the sound in the back.
Can you hear me now? Okay. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our Region 1 clinic. We're very excited to have you here, and we're really excited about the panels and the speakers that we're going to be presenting to you over the next 2 days. I am really very excited about this panel here, in particular because two of the panelists from Michigan and from Texas attended previous clinics, and they were with a state team sitting in the audience like you are, and they worked on their action plan, and they went back to their states, and they have just done some phenomenal work since the clinics on integrating registered apprenticeship, making it more of a central focus of workforce development in their states. So we have very high expectations of this group here that you can attain those same kinds of results that we've seen in Texas and Michigan. And they really are just the tip of the iceberg. This clinic is designed with 3 panels, and the 3 panels really focus on the heart of integration and partnership. And this first one is policy and strategic planning and resource alignment. So you've got to come up with a plan, you've got to have a strategy, and then you have to have those resources aligned with what you want to do. And that can be funds, it can be people, it can be the way you do your work, and really the way you implement different aspects of what you want to do. So, without further ado on that, I will introduce our panel. We first have Dr. Peggy Torrey from South Carolina. She's the Deputy Secretary for Workforce in the state in the Department of Commerce, and she's responsible for overseeing the administration of the Workforce Investment Program. And prior to this position, Peggy served as Assistant Vice President of Education Policy at the South Carolina Chamber of Commerce. And our second speaker, Wes Jury, many of you may know him. He's very well known in the workforce system. He's been president and CEO of the Arlington, Texas Chamber of Commerce since 2001. He's also chair of the Texas Workforce Investment Council, which is an advisory body with the responsibility to develop a strategic plan for the Texas workforce system. And additionally, Wes serves on the U.S. Secretary of Labor's Advisory Committee on Apprenticeship. And our third speaker is Janet Howard from the state of Michigan. She's the Deputy Director of the Bureau of Workforce Transformation in the Department of Energy, Labor, and Economic Growth. She's currently on special assignment as the Workforce Advisor with the Economic Recovery Office established by the Governor to oversee the administration, allocation, and coordination of the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act funds in the state. So before we get started, I would like to ask you all a favor. If you wouldn't mind turning off your cell phones and your iPhones and put full attention to the panel and the other ones this afternoon, because this is really the heart and soul of these clinics, and this is where you're going to get your ideas for what you can do in your states. So thank you very much, and let me turn it over to Peggy Torrey.
Thank you, Laura. First of all, it's wonderful to be with you in the Northeast from South Carolina. I understand we have weather, so I may be with you for a while. I really want to reiterate what several of your groups have already said, and that is it's all about partnerships. In South Carolina, I'm going to give you a whirlwind tour of where we've been in the last 6 years or so, and only touch the tip of the iceberg in many of those areas, but we'll be glad to talk with you later about all of them. Okay, these are the partners that really came to the table in South Carolina to make what I'm about to describe to you happen. And I want to go to the end before I start at the beginning and tell you that as of today, with the collaboration of the Workforce Investment Board, the Chambers of Commerce, and our state technical college system, that's like your community college system, we have now funded out of WIA money apprenticeships with over 37 businesses, and we funded over 450 apprentices. So in order to get there, let me take you on our roadmap. I know you can't see that. I'm going to go over it very briefly with you. First of all, I've posted a lot of things on the website for you. So many things that I'm going to reference are up there if you want to look at them in more depth. This timeline is one of them. Back in 2003, we began a journey at the Chamber to look at the merger and mesh of aligning education, economic development, and workforce development. And we actually ended up with some legislation in 2005 called the Education and Economic Development Act. The reason that's important to this venture is that it requires every single high school student to have some opportunity on the job before graduation from high school. It can be a shadowing experience, although that has to be very structured. It can be an internship, or it can be a registered apprenticeship. Because of that, it forced South Carolina to look more seriously at the training method called apprenticeship. We had not done that very well in our state. And with apologies to all of you that are our union representatives, I have to tell you that one of our biggest hurdles in South Carolina, because we are a right-to-work state, was getting past the feeling that every apprenticeship was unionized apprenticeship. So you have contributed invaluably to the effort of registered apprenticeships, and we value that in South Carolina as well. We have a very strong longshoremen's union that has helped us with our apprenticeship movement. We have Charles Brave on our state board, and he has been a mover and shaker in this effort. But again, in order to move it forward in a right-to-work state, we had to convince people that not only were there registered apprenticeships that were union-based and union-trained, but there were apprenticeships in other areas as well. And I have to tell you that the apprenticeships that we've sponsored, those 450 that I talked about, range from healthcare workers to IT workers, to more traditional chemical operators, mechanical operators, electricians, etc. So it's been a wide range of apprentices. Okay, so in 2005 we passed that legislation. We began to really push from the state chamber the use of registered apprenticeships. And I know that sounds like an odd marriage in some ways, but we wanted to convince businesses that South Carolina had underutilized that training opportunity. So we produced 2 white papers. Again, these are posted on the website if you want them. The first one was basically just history of apprenticeships, what other states were doing in apprenticeships. Our neighbors, Georgia and North Carolina, had far surpassed us. In fact, in 2006, I think we had a total of around 800 apprentices in the entire state. So we really needed to do something about that. That paper began the discussion, but then we also brought in a person from Switzerland. She had worked for one of the companies in South Carolina, international companies, Roche. She actually did a comparison between South Carolina and Switzerland in the use of registered apprenticeships. You can imagine what that looked like. One of the things that she said has really shaped the way that our system has developed, and that was that in South Carolina, like in much of the country, we had oversold the American dream. What does that mean? We had convinced every single parent and every single child that in order to be successful, you had to have a 4-year college diploma. Not true. So what she said was, in order to get past that issue, and we had apprenticeships with Bosch, with Siemens, that were going begging. We couldn't find people to fill them. So we had to convince parents and kids that this was a good way to begin a career. And it was a great way to begin your education. So the way that we began to overcome that in South Carolina is that we actually lodged our apprenticeship program in our technical college system. It's called Apprenticeship Carolina. In 2006, we managed to get legislation passed that gave a $1,000 tax break to any employer who had a registered apprentice. Up to 4 years, so $4,000 per apprentice, had to be registered. We had a lot of things that were called apprenticeships in South Carolina, but they weren't registered apprenticeships. So we got the tax break passed. We also got $1 million set aside from the state general funds for use to set up an infrastructure at our state technical college system to actually begin to help businesses understand apprenticeships and do the paperwork. As y'all well know, it is not easy to begin a registered apprenticeship. So the state technical college system hired 4 people. Those 4 people had territories in South Carolina, and they actually went out and offered to hold a business's hand through the process. At the same time, we at the State Workforce Investment Board were beginning to push apprenticeships with our WIA money. Our state board came up with a state plan. Part of the state plan was registered apprenticeships and increasing the number of registered apprenticeships. Again, that plan is posted on the website if you'd like to see it. We had a state policy committee, it's called the Advocacy Committee, and we came up with an advocacy plan for statewide apprenticeships. We put $1 million of WIA state funds, that 10% reserve money, into building apprenticeships. We required in the first year that it focus on 5 sectors, and we also said that for the first year it had to be tied into one of our technical colleges. They didn't have to actually do the work, do the training. The business could pick anybody they wanted to, but they had to be part of the process to move it along. Also in 2006, we built into our WIA incentive program. And for those of y'all not familiar with WIA, every state has to have an incentive program for their local areas. In South Carolina, we said that for the local areas to get all of their incentive money, they had to come up with a plan during 2007 to increase apprenticeships in their areas. If they did that, just had a plan, they didn't have to implement it, they got some incentive money. The following year, we built that into our incentive program again. You talk about coordinating policy. We said they had to increase apprenticeships in their area. A lot of questions. Do we have to fund it? Do we have to block? No. We don't care how you do it. This is about partnerships. Get with your businesses, get with your technical college folks, and increase the number of apprenticeships. Every single one of our 12 areas did that, hands down. I mean, the number of apprenticeships skyrocketed. Finally, we've actually got our infrastructure on the ground. We have the State Technical College out working with businesses, and let me show you the results. That's just a little more information about the tax